Welcome to another episode of the Balcony Podcast. It's been a long time between drinks, but it's an absolute pleasure to have Kelsey Spanier here on the podcast. Welcome aboard.
Thanks so much for having me.
Kelsey is technically my boss, but he's a lot more than that. I'm going to let Kelsey talk about this more in depth, but Kelsey leads a very, very unique team of individuals at Vancouver Island Brewery that were formed in very, very unique circumstances, and it's almost like he was the perfect person to do it because Kelsey absolutely embodies everything to do with the balcony. He puts his people first. He's a vulnerable person. He's just very, very kind, too kind almost as a boss at times, and he just lives and breathes his passion. He loves beer. We'll show the tattoos. It's everywhere, but he's living something that he's passionate about, and you can see that in the work that he's doing, and it resonates amongst the team, and it's a really, really beautiful thing. He has been a huge support to me through my journey here, which we've unpacked on previous podcasts, and is a key catalyst in almost what I would call one of the families that I have here, and I'm very, very grateful for you, and I'm really excited to unpack a lot of that stuff here with you this evening. I'll hand it over to you, and you can pick where you want to start unpacking all of that loveliness.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I'll tell you a bit about how we kind of met and how the team kind of came together, because it's kind of very unique to meeting during COVID. So in August, I applied for the taproom manager position and ended up getting it, and then very quickly transitioned from the job that I was doing to moving into being the taproom manager at VIP. And from that, I was gifted the best team I could ask for. We got really lucky. It's not often that you come into a job, and it's very different to come into a job in a management position than a normal position. I find that's a very intimidating thing.
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of coming in, you have to kind of learn as you go, but also kind of establish that role. But I got really lucky because we'd been set up with this really amazing group of people who, it's not often that you have so many different people really truly get along and be supportive from the very beginning. Like from the minute we all started around the same time, so we're learning it all together, and we got really lucky, and we have established a really awesome team. And then about a month or so into it, I was looking for another person to kind of come in as like a casual kind of person, and Tiara sent me over Tyler's resume. He'd already applied, and that was it. So I hired him off the email.
Let's talk about, I guess, the freshness of the team and I guess the unique settings that we all came for to sort of build the picture. And I'm going to hype you up for the majority of this, so just strap yourself in for that. You had so many people that were in different stages of life, different ages, different backgrounds, and we can talk about them because we're only going to say those things. But you had Piper, who had just started pre-pandemic and was ready to go in this new role and was going to do tours and all this type of stuff, and was studying, and then all of a sudden completely shut down. You had Kira, who was going into trades. You had myself, who had absolutely no idea what was going to happen next, because I just completely changing absolutely everything. And then the consistent cog in there of Kat was also in such a transitional stage. You're bringing all these unique levels of energy and experience into a team, and like you said, the leadership aspect, which is what I want to really discuss a lot with you in this sort of setting. I can only imagine the sense of, I guess, responsibility you felt for all of us, because we were all in such shifting stages. I've never really asked you, was that really overwhelming in that regard, or how did you feel going into that?
I wouldn't say it was completely overwhelming, because I did have, this wasn't my first management role. So I come from my biggest job that I've had prior to this was I was a taproom manager at White Sails Brewing. So that was kind of where I got a crash course in management, and I definitely made some mistakes along the way, but I've learned a whole lot about how I want to run a team and how to build that kind of culture within the team. And I think it's safe to say that it's fairly successful with our group for sure.
Yeah.
So I would say it was intimidating to come in and having not met any of the people I was going to be working with, not really knowing what it was going to be like, and just kind of take it on as best as I could. Yeah, it was definitely a tough start, but testament to not just our team but everyone else at the brewery too for like really like standing behind us and kind of getting behind us and supporting us through it. Like between like our HR manager Tiara, she was fantastic, getting us kind of onboarded. Everyone who's kind of helped us figure it out, because we figured it out all together, and that's a pretty cool story. It's not often that like a group of people come together all new like that and kind of without like knowing each other before and kind of click that quickly. So yeah.
And the reason I didn't mention it before is because I was going to ask if it relates to this type of stuff, but obviously Jen Zilla worked in the back as well and has some experience deeper in the brewery. You mentioned Thierry, you mentioned Danny and all that type of stuff. Obviously there's a lot of support that comes into that from the guys that were already there. But I bring that up to mention this. From our perspective, it was mostly just yourself that we had access to. Obviously Thierry was amazing in the recruitment stuff, but has moved on since then as well. Talk to me a little bit about the strategies you used, and let's bring it a little bit more balcony-esque in terms of stuff that we really want to talk about, in terms of giving yourself a little bit of credit as to why it all came together really well.
Yeah, for sure. So I think as like something that I really learned going through with White Sales and coming into this, and how I want to be as a boss. I hate using the term boss, I truly do, but like when you're in a leadership position like that, I think that treating everyone with respect comes first, and also like just treating them like they're people. Like I think that's what it comes down to. They're not disposable employees to me. They're people who come into work and work really hard, and they're part of my team. So I'm going to take care of my team, and kind of approaching that and being open to like, never getting upset when I had phone calls at night when things were going wrong, or having to run down to the brewery to fix a lock that they couldn't figure out, kind of thing. Like that stuff happens, and it's not fun, but it's like coming into it with kindness and openness so you can kind of create that dialogue together, because I truly don't think that bosses who yell at their employees or put down their employees or treat their employees that are less than them are going to get as much out of their employee as treating them with respect and kindness and working with them to kind of build that trust between a manager and an employee. Like it's really like I come into it and I go, and every time I go, I'm not going to be the manager who sits there and tells everyone else what to do and delegates stuff. I'll happily delegate stuff, but you're not going to see me not working. That's something that's really important to me, is to show up and have that work ethic. And it's really important to me that people feel comfortable at work, comfortable talking to me, and if as issues arise, we solve them as a team, not individually, or you don't feel bad about having to come and talk to someone about stuff.
Yeah, I think some things out of that, treating everyone as a person, individually. In my management experience as well, and even what I'm doing now with Justos, and we're developing that team, and we talk about the role and the person, and they're two separate things. And unfortunately, a lot of times in the professional sense, people do separate that, but really just focus on the role side of things. But it's the people side that should always come first. You mentioned trust. I think your transparency in how much you love what you're doing, and all those things you said, was so obvious at the start that obviously this is a passion project of mine, and we'll talk about your amazing support of the balcony at some stage as we go through it. But for me, living this style of life and when I'm promoting this type of lifestyle, it was so easy, and it just clicked with yourself, and then that just became almost the status quo in the team. And then no matter what was happening in other parts of the brewery or the world, COVID, whatever, this little in-house of people, like all of us, we just knew that we were always there for each other. We knew that you had our backs. I think you knew that we had your backs.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's so much uncertainty as well.
Like, I think like especially right now, we're navigating something completely different. Like I go to put out a schedule, and it can change, and it's like everyone's got to be super flexible, and it's super weird. But like, having that trust that like I'm not gonna do anything that's gonna jeopardize you guys, and your guys are going to kind of support me and roll with it, and like, yeah, building out that kind of like within the workplace kind of thing for sure. And then there's also that aspect of this like unquestioning support with a team that I think is separate. It's built from our relationship as a team at the brewery, but it really does come as like a group of friends at the end of the day.
I think that's a good way of we've really set the scene as to how it's all come together, and we've talked a lot about the tangibles and intangible factors that have led to that happening. But you look at the journey, and you know, pre whatever Bonnie, I'm trying not to talk about the first level of shutdown when we were kind of hanging out as a group early. Those touch points were taken away from us, and we pivoted a bit and we did the Zoom thing, and that was really fun and stuff like that. But a lot of that stuff has dropped off recently because some of the team is starting to split up and move into other things, but which are things that they're super passionate about, which is great. But in recent times, there's been some really hectic things happening individually in our lives, and I think I look back and think like how lucky we were to have yourself and to have built that environment then, because you know I've definitely struggled with a lot of things, even just recently with you know the realization of not being able to go home and overwhelming nature of all the things that I'm doing, and I'm not going to mention names of the other things that are going on, but there's a lot of other serious things that are happening in our group, and there's just been this instant like support straight away. But beyond that, when something happens, we immediately tell each other.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like, you know, I obviously don't have family here, or I have like my whole form of family and stuff. But you know, you guys are almost the first to tell any of these stuff, especially when I'm struggling and things like that, and that's inherent in the rest of the group as well. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And when it comes to this stuff, which we'll get more into about yourself and the relationship with that, like that's the key thing, just talking about it.
Yeah.
It's the biggest hurdle, and there's no hurdle for that.
And it's talking about everything too. It's the good stuff and the bad stuff. Like our group chat's there no matter what it is. Like, you know, there's these last couple of weeks, like I think there was a big turn within almost I think everyone in the last like 2 months in the team where we're all going through pretty major life things. Like some of us are changing jobs, some of us have moved, some of us are making big life decisions and going through some stuff, and like especially right now where we're so isolated, it's like it feels really amazing to have that group where like whether it's something good or something bad that you want to share, you've got that like and it's always there and it's always open and like and it's not just falling on dead ears. It's people who are excited to hear about it or there for you if you need it. So yeah, that's pretty amazing.
And that's an important thing to highlight as well. I guess not a lot, but sometimes a stigma with, however you want to describe this, it can be described in so many ways, is that it usually relates to negative things, or it's like you're only there when things go wrong and that type of stuff. But celebrating the wins, and especially coming from Australia, I don't know if you've heard of tall poppy syndrome, which is when anyone gets really good at anything, you usually just cut them down. That culture is toxic, and we've developed an environment where whether it's tough or whether it's great, it's just positive and it's shared. And even with what's going on right now with myself, we can talk about all the things that are happening in the group, but it's probably easiest to use our examples. But you know, I've reached out and said that I need to reduce time there because of all the other exciting things that are going on with Justos, which is tough, but that is a positive thing in itself, and it's being celebrated. That there's no like it's an amazing thing. Kira getting her trade job. Yeah, that's an amazing thing. It's tough for you, but you're probably the happiest person in the world.
That's the thing. Is like I think I said this to you like fairly early on from when like after I hired you. Like the best possible thing for me would be to see you get to where you are right now, where Justos takes off, and this takes off, and all of it takes off, and this is all the stuff that like you're really passionate about. I'm really happy to be able to provide everyone with a really fun workplace and a really like positive place to go and a great team, but in the end, like bartending at a brewery is not like your end goal, and I'm here to support that 100%. That's the whole thing. So seeing like you have to take a step back, well, you know what, it should be celebrated. It's awesome that like that's kind of grown to the level where you're comfortable going, no, like this is where I need to be and this is what I want to do, and I'm just here to support that. That's the whole job. Like
no, thank you, I appreciate that. And I think I'm excited for whoever is lucky enough to end up in this culture and experience what I'm still experiencing, what the others have experienced. I say this to Justin a lot, that culture is just how you reactionally go to solve problems, right? So you've built that in the team, and that when something goes wrong or something goes right, there's an immediate reaction, and that new person that's what they're going to learn, and that's amazing. We've mentioned Justos a bit, but before we dive into your support of that, I just want to tell everyone that Kelsey is just the biggest supporter of this. Anytime when I talked about podcasts, when I talked about doing some merch, when I did the November thing, first person to donate, to want to buy stuff, to want to represent, to want to just talk about it to others. The microphone I'm going to use for the next individual one, there's a big fancy light here that my friends would absolutely laugh at if they saw. It's all been donated by Kelsey and Meg.
And Meg.
Yeah, so I was going to shout out. But the beer fridge, there's just so much. You're such a selfless person.
I was also moving, so it really helped me out too. So it's selfish a little bit, but I'm happy someone can use it.
You're getting inside the You're never going to take any super big compliment. But same with the Just So stuff. You just hype. You're the biggest supporter of us. You're literally our number one fan. You've been posted on the page as the number one fan. I want to talk more about you as an individual, because we talked about the group. We talked about how we've met. We talked about what that means. And honestly, it's so honourable what you're doing, and I don't want to just move past that too quickly. But let's talk about where this comes from yourself, because there has to be, whether good or bad, some catalyst for you wanting to provide that, or naturally providing that, being able to provide that space for others, and having all these high EQ skills that are amazing.
Yeah, for sure. So I think I'll dive in and tell you a little bit about how I kind of went from, I guess, end of high school to end up at a brewery, because it certainly wasn't like the path that was necessarily, I want to say laid out, but necessarily the one that I'd gone towards. Mm-hmm. And it took a lot of changes, and I think it really affected why why I support people or try to support people as best as I can. Mm-hmm. I think so to kind of sum up how I kind of ended up at the brewery and how I kind of ended up moving through it. I was in high school. My dad is a math teacher, and my mom is an early childhood developer, so very into school, but not necessarily trying hard. I don't know if there's a way to say it without bragging, but I kind of coasted and did really well all throughout high school, and I wasn't top of the class, but I was pretty close, and basically I got to the end of high school and went into engineering, because I was like, that's what the people who are good at math do, kind of thing. And I was like, it sounds cool. I'm going to make a lot of money. It was all for the wrong reasons.
Become an accountant.
Yeah. But it was not for the right reasons. It's not something I was passionate about. So I started, and I went into university, and I very quickly got kicked down, as I should have. I kind of went in and, tanked a couple things, and then kind of built it back up and started trying, and I was actually really successful in university. And I did that for 2 years, and I got into biomedical engineering, and I did 2 semesters of that, and it became very apparent that this wasn't for me. So that was kind of the first big decision that I'd ever made, as I need to choose what my gut's telling me and follow what I actually want to do. This doesn't feel right. I have to switch. So at the time I was in a statistics course. I was really enjoying it. It was the first time in university that I've truly enjoyed learning about something. So I was like, well, this is the first time I've felt passionate about something in a long time. So I started statistics, and I switched majors. That went really well as well. But I also learned through that process that I still wasn't passionate about it. I was good at it, and I think that's what it came down to. As I was good at it, and it came pretty naturally to me, and it felt good because it was like that. But it was never something that I was necessarily passionate and wanted to do for the rest of my life. I didn't want to get stuck behind a desk. Yep. And then, so I ended up working at a liquor store, as you do, and started trying a lot of new beers, and that was my exposure to craft beer. I was working at a liquor store, just trying stuff for a summer, because I had nothing else to do. I was like, I'm going to sample some stuff, drink some beer, And that kind of spiraled into this unending obsession with it, and in the drinking side, in like just the interest of like learning more about it, because it's very much I always tell people it's a subject you can go as little or as deep into as you want. It's very much something that like you can learn the general styles and you're going to be good for the rest of your life. You don't have to know all this stuff.
Yeah.
But it's also something that has a very defined art behind it. So it was really interesting to me. I really wanted to learn how to brew. I wanted to learn all these things. I started reading books on it, and it was the first time I'd ever really felt like this is something really cool. And something that I should really want to follow and see where it goes. So I applied at White Sails. They took me on. I ended up very quickly moving up there in their tap room because it was kind of like a 3-4 years into them being open, so there was those people who'd been working there for 3 years who were kind of transitioning out. So I very quickly kind of jumped up the ladder, and their taproom manager at the time was going on to maternity leave, so they, for some reason, with no management experience, gave me the keys, and they said go, and it's a 140 seat taproom that I just went for it, and I put everything I had into that brewery and into managing a team for the first time. It was actually a bigger team than what I have now. And I learned a whole lot along the way. And I learned a lot from the people that I was working with, and specifically there's one of my buddies named Sam. He's fantastic. He taught me a whole bunch about, I guess just like being a compassionate person. Not to say I wasn't, but just seeing how open he was. He would very much get along with you, and that he really inspires people to talk about things, be open, be vulnerable, be the best kind of person you can be, which is like something I kind of didn't have exposure to before. I'd never met someone who was like that. I came from a small town, and I went into some hard subjects, and I was pretty much just school. So it was the first time I've ever met someone who was like that, and it really inspired me. And then through that, I was working with all of these amazing other businesses, other small local businesses, and that's where kind of the love for like supporting local kind of came. It's not necessarily something I had prior to starting in the brewing industry, but there's such a collaboration between small businesses in the brewing industry, both breweries and other local businesses. That kind of inspired that, and just talking to those people who are running those businesses and working with them to cross promote and work together and do all these cool projects really inspired me to really start supporting others like that. So I guess that's kind of where, having taken on so much at White Sails and taken on that whole team when they were really in a tough spot and there wasn't really a light for it, and I kind of just went for it and like learned a bunch and was the best like manager I could be by being the manager I would want, kind of thing. And yeah, that's kind of where it came from. It's really just learning then, and then taking note of all the people in the industry and learning from them, and that's kind of where it came from. And then just kind of inspired me to start just being more open and vulnerable and compassionate towards other people. I think that's the kind of the sum up of it. And then finished my degree and went kind of back into beer. So
that story pretty much hits on every and I say buzzword not sarcastically, buzzword that I would use to describe my own thing. Your example of what you learned from Sam, the empowerment of living life that way in terms of the vulnerability aspect and all that type of stuff is, I think the 3 words that I wrote down when I've been deep reflection about the balcony are like connect, unlock, and empower, in that order as well. You build trust, and then you open someone up, and then you empower them to take over the world. You've pretty much experienced that in that story.
Absolutely.
But whilst there's always maybe an external catalyst or inspiration, or learning probably is the better way to describe it. You always learn from every person that you meet. You felt your way through it the right way as well, with how you're feeling about what you're passionate about. And sometimes when my closest friends ask me, like, Tyler, I'm struggling, like, what do I do, or what should I do? I can never tell them what to do.
Yeah.
You can always advise what not to do, because you can ask them, how do you feel when you're doing it, and what doesn't make you happy, and all that type of stuff. And you went through that whole journey, which is unreal. And what I guess we're experiencing as the tap room crew is someone that has identified what gives them energy, has learned the human elements of working in a team, in a baptism of fire, taking over a team.
Truly. 2 teams that I took over just in the worst, not the worst way, but like the very difficult circumstances.
Sure.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. And now your influence on others, even in recent weeks, you've been moving. There's been, a lot of work going on at work with new launches, changing staff, all this type of stuff.
Yeah.
You don't ever waver from those core inherent values. You can tell when you're stressed, and you can tell when you're down in energy, or when you haven't slept.
Yeah.
That's very human. But your core essence is just so representative of all those values from that story, and I think that there's so much that others can take from that. And I've said this a lot through the podcast and just through COVID in general, is that this is this time, and still is here in Canada. People, when I talk to my friends back home, they almost forget that there's a pandemic going on, because Australia's just laughing right now. But here, there's still a huge opportunity with this forced closure, and to stop to reflect and to really, assess where you're going and what you're doing and why. And without some of that human connection, there's even more time to reflect on the relationships you have with people as well.
Yeah, I often I think back to a couple of conversations I had with Sam, especially when we were way too late in the White Sails tap room, far past close, where we're kind of talking about where we want to be. Mm-hmm. And just really opening up and talking about how just what we want to do, what our goals are. And it's pretty amazing that I talk to him every once in a while. It's we update each other when we hit them, Mm-hmm. He's a teacher, and he just and he's working as a kindergarten teacher, and he's killing it. And that was his goal the whole time I knew him. And to see that kind of come from that conversation where he's no, I deeply want to do this, and then he goes and does it. And same way, one of my big ones was wanting to adopt a dog. I'm adopting a dog this summer. You hit those milestones, and it's so much more when you had that support in those conversations, and you talk to people about how you're going to get there, and
Mm-hmm.
work together to kind of build each other up.
And those relationships always mean more than any superficial cross path relationship that you have in life. And even if and let's use the tap room for example right now, some of the time that we've all been officially working together is going to be pretty short, because 2 have moved on, almost 3 essentially, I guess. But when your relationships are really based on vulnerability, honesty, trust, and this is the same with my friends back home, you can be on the other side of the world. You cannot see them for, it's probably going to be 2 years for most of these guys, but if it's real, and it lasts, and it'll stand the test of distance and time, and that's amazing. And even just brief touch points of those things just feel so, I don't know, just so energizing. And hear positive things about people that you've had those encounters with, and you're planting many a seeds to have those relationships with throughout your life. That's pretty cool. Thank you for sharing that story. You talked about goals, and you've talked about the celebration of all the success that Justos is having, and you're actually a part of it because you're such a big advocate for it. We haven't really talked about this too much because obviously, for myself, probably at fault, get caught up in a lot of the now stuff. But what's next for you in that regards? Then you've got the dog.
That was the big one, honestly. I've always said, I could work any job, and that's the one thing in my life I've always wanted. It's the one thing I was I want to work towards that. I want to get to the point where I'm emotionally ready, financially ready, and I'm finally there, and it feels really amazing to be there, and also have the friend support to be able to confidently do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's with the team, with everyone, specifically the team for sure, because I'm gonna need some time off. I'm gonna need some support. It's gonna be a difficult time, but it's gonna be a very exciting time.
Mm-hmm.
As for what's next, I'm still trying to figure that out, but I've had a good run of luck just following my gut. I think I've made some pretty big decisions with, changing my major, quitting jobs that didn't feel right. I don't talk about it as much, but there's a brewery in between White Sails and VIB that I was with, and I was potentially going to be the taproom manager there and move into a similar
Mm-hmm.
role. I actually left that brewery because it didn't feel right. It wasn't the right thing for me, and it was causing me a large deal of I guess emotional stress. It just wasn't the right fit, and it was causing a little anxiety and such just about going to work. And I was I got myself out of that situation. So I think making those decisions based on what's best for you and what makes you feel healthy and feel good. this job that I'm working right now, it's by far the hardest job I've had, but it makes me feel so good to do it. So that's kind of where it comes from.
That's an amazing, that feeling that you had in the other role. I think it's unreal how when you are living a life where you're following your passions and you have meaning and you're looking inwards first and stuff. Firstly, when you do that type of stuff, I feel like the universe looks after you a little bit, but you're able to identify when things are, when you start to feel tethered to or pulling you things that don't align with that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And I almost fear for, I'm not gonna say the world. So there's a lot of people out there I feel like that don't take that time for themselves, that I feel like would miss those signs that are stopping them maybe being a little bit more fulfilled or noticing things that aren't the best decision for themselves, because I feel like you really have to create a space for it and almost commit to it. It's like meditation. It's a practice. I think that's almost as an amazing story as your journey one before that, because you're able to identify that and go, no, that doesn't feel right, that doesn't fit. That's pretty special.
Yeah, it definitely, it came down to like, it wasn't right, and like I could feel it wasn't right, but it was also a job that like I was very excited to get. So like when I got it, I was elated. It was awesome. It was like the break that I wanted and it kind of reaffirmed white sales, and I was like, oh yeah, this is a place that I've always, I guess looked at in high regard, and it's like, wow, I'm really excited to be here. And then when it kind of transitioned and it wasn't exactly what was good for me, I think it was a tough call for sure. But I think listening to it, like, I'm so glad I did. Like, it was the right decision. It definitely, like, it was a fast decision to make that call, but it was the right one. And I ended up, going back to visit family instead of staying there to work over Christmas, which super glad I did because of COVID. So didn't know that was going to happen.
Yeah, right.
But I think like for me, as soon as like I had given my 2 weeks and had gone through my 2 weeks and was like, on the plane going back to visit my family, it was like, yeah, I did need this. Like, this is the right call. Like, yeah, regardless of what's going to happen when I go back and I have to find a new job, like that's the right call for me. So yeah.
Nice. Well, I just want to say that our relationship to date, whilst we've just unpacked how it's, the perfect balcony-esque team, there's still always been that level of restriction on being able to have an open friendship because of COVID, in terms of being able to do things and socialize and stuff. It's been a very either at work or online relationship, and I just wanted to say that even as I retract my time from the tap room, one of the most things that I'm excited for post COVID is to be able to actually just be your mate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Normally,
yeah,
because and I feel blessed. I've been thinking about this specifically because I've been going through a rough couple of weeks, and I shared that with you. Reflecting on having people like Justin, Adam, and Eric, and yourself, and Logan, and Marky, and people that are just big hearts, and Ted.
Yeah.
Like, I feel just so lucky, and I'm just so excited to be able to post COVID, like, hug you properly.
Yeah.
And just live life in that way, because you're an amazing person. I know the rest of the team, we talk in awe about you when you're not around, and that's a huge reflection of, I guess, leadership in general, is what your team says about you when you're not around, and to each other, and that type of stuff. And we sometimes I want you to tell me off more when I do the wrong thing with permanent markers and stuff, but it's just a part of who you are, and we respect you for it, and we absolutely love you. We absolutely love Meg. I'm so excited for you. Congratulations on the house. Congratulations on the dog. Cannot wait for the dog to get here.
Same here. Oh my god. It's been a week. I love that guy.
Yeah, right? You gotta see. I don't know, I should probably put a photo of the dog.
Flip one up there.
So cute. And it would go remiss to not say that if you are in Victoria over summer and beyond, to get yourself down to Vancouver Island Brewery's tap room, because you're not only going to get great beer, you're going to get the best staff trained by one of the best humans in the world, and it's palpable when you go there now. And I'm excited to just come in and have a few beers there over summer, even when I'm not working, because the energy there is just so amazing with the team that you have created. It's your baby, and I know the whole brewery raves about the team that you've created. So this was a long time coming. We both had a lot of stuff going on, but I'm so glad that everyone's been able to hear your story. That's just so relevant to all this type of stuff. And, you know, I'm glad that the community theme with some of the stuff that we're talking about is coming up more, because hopefully as things get to die down a little bit more, that can be a really surge in reconnecting with people and building this type of stuff up. And I think there's a bigger need for it for Evan. You're a huge advocate, and I love you.
Love you too. Yeah. And I do have to say, like although you give me a lot of credit for the tap room, we were open and we were friends, but I think bringing you into the team really did enhance that connection a lot. You brought the balcony to us, and like really, you changed the team. So yeah, I mean, I appreciate that too.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we're a great little tag team. So maybe we'll have to just start a brewery or something together on the side.
Brewery, hummus, and
that's the key to the fridge.
Yep.
Awesome. Cool. Get down to the brewery, and we'll speak soon.